Welcome to the Muslim Street. The Muslim Street, you can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. That'll be our periodical, which has hard-hitting articles and from some of the leading thought leaders in the Muslim community. Our focus is liberation and where we can find it. We represent solutions, keys, discussion around oppressed people around the world. And that's our central focus. This is not a podcast in terms of journalism. This is a podcast in terms of building a movement. So I want to jump right into a couple things today. We have Dr. Viper Issa White with us, who is our correspondent to the Muslim Street. Again, we have Art Mobley. Art Mobley is founder of Mobley Productions and Mobley Mobile, but also the Darfur 23. We're going to do a part two from our subject from last week, Africa's youth movement, Panafricanism, and the revolutions in the Sahel. We are expecting a guest from Cameroon to join us a little later, and we're going to get heavy into that subject matter. Again, the Muslim Street as a podcast, the Muslim Street as a periodical is a movement. You can find us across all social media, Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and of course, YouTube at the Muslim Street. It is a trademark. So there's an elephant in the room that we want to kind of tackle before we get into this. Everybody else has been buzzing around the country about an assassination that took place of a man by the name of Charlie Kirk. So we just want to kind of spend a few minutes before we dive into our very important topic. I'm going to read a monologue from a sister who is a Pan-African revolutionary here in this country. Her name is Artemisha Kelly, and this will be kind of like a fire starter. She writes, Charlie Kirk was a very dangerous man, going about the nation, spewing propaganda, pathologizing, and demonizing Black folks to incite a civil war. He should be concerned with white dysfunction, the violence and brutality in white homes, the mass human trafficking, and the pedophilia rings that white people have. The huge amount of drugs and guns that are on the campuses, predominantly white institutions and campuses, and in white homes. That's what he should be concerned about. He should have been concerned about child abuse and spousal abuse in white homes and in white communities. The serial killers and the mass shooters, they're all white. Historically, they've always been white. The raising of their children to kill, putting guns in their hands at 3 years old, disproportionately rendering animals extinct from hunting. He should have been concerned about the financing and production of child porn, along with the abduction of babies, the production and distribution of it. That should have been his focus. As white men are the number one group who are arrested and convicted for these crimes. He should have been concerned himself with the number of fake degrees being given out at the so-called top universities just for attendance, because mediocre white boys happen to be legacy. The sexual assaults that they're number one in, the genocide his people commits, Palestine, the medical and environmental apartheid that white societies commit worldwide, the toppling of governments, the unilateral proxy wars, the heinous atrocities that his people commit. He should have been campaigning nationally to stop white dysfunction. And the fact that Black people are co-signing in agreement says a lot about who you are and how politically illiterate many of you are. Complicit in your own demise. Radical, neocon, extreme racism dressed up as a freedom of speech while simultaneously advocating for public execution, targeting Black folks is not mere words or freedom of speech. The background is beautiful. Nope. You do not get to blame Black people for social problems. while dismissing the existence of systematic issues which serve to rally his neoconservative base to take on the onus off and to take the onus off white people. Charlie Kirk's motivation was primarily political, aimed at gaining influence by exploiting racial tension and resentment. His strategic involved his strategy involved focusing on issues framed as racial conflicts. Charlie Kirk energized and united his predominantly white audience around a narrative of white victimization by creating culture wars. He purposely ignored issues within the white community, focusing on black communities, focusing on black communities. He easily avoided discussing issues such as poverty, addiction, homelessness, and extreme violence within white communities, just as those of you who are in agreement are doing so today. Because you see black folks through the lens of the colonizer, the oppressor. This is white supremacy 101, a propaganda tactic which allowed him to divert attention from white struggles and frame black communities as the root of American problems. Many of you need to grow up in your political analysis. The lack of aptitude for critical thinking and understanding the difference between free speech and anti-black white nationalist agenda is nothing more than conditioning. Meanwhile, he was killed by a member of his own faction. For not being racist enough, he was killed. Not being extreme enough, he was killed by one of his own. Now that's some white dysfunction for your ass. And again, that's a Pan-African system by the name of Artemisha Kelly. That is our fire starter. Dr. White, what are your thoughts?
Very interesting. When I hear, first of all, I believe in free speech. And regardless of the perspective or the ideology, we live in a country that follows the First Amendment, and that's free speech. When we begin to utilize elements of violence to destroy free speech, it is a direct attack on the African American community. I mean, we had people like Malcolm X killed because of his perspective. We had people like Paul Robeson silenced because of his perspective. Martin Luther King killed because of his political perspective. So we have to be very, very careful about that type of thing. Secondly, we have to look at the fact that while there are a number of people like the sister who just wrote the treatise that you just read, I asked the question, where were you when he was alive? Did you attack him? Did you confront him? Did you write such things? You see, it gives no sense of bravery to write such things when a person is dead. You see, you attack them, you go after them, you show your evidence, you make your point while they're on the scene. Also, what's very interesting about this is that um, 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 he, Charlie Kirk, was an advisor to Donald Trump. And he was the only one within the Trump scene that advised him not to allow Israel to attack Iran. Very important point. He also argued that, listen, Iran is not a country you want to go and get in a fight with. That's what he told him. Along with this, he also stated that Israel must be curtailed. We must begin to pull out. Not that he supported Israel, but he did not like their perspective and how they're doing things, and also that perspective. That has to be said. All right, because some of our pundits are not looking at the general scope of it. Also, we must understand that this killing was not a killing between left or right. I would argue more so than anything, it was directly tied to the Israeli government, and more evidence will come out on that because they tried to pay him off. They tried to give him several millions of dollars to his organization called Turning Point, and he said he rejected it because he was not going to be in line with a certain type of ideology that is based on just uh, unstoppable killing. So that must be understood. So again, the sister made some interesting points, but as an academic, as a political observer, we have to look at everything in detail. And I think most of the people who followed Kurt, many of them were young white conservatives who did not like Israel. All right, we have to understand that there is a growing movement of young people on the left and right who's against Israel and against the war, and he represented that. He was also in league with Candace Owens, right? Remember, Candace Owens was fired from the Daily Wire because she disagreed with Ben Shapiro, who owned the Daily Wire over Israel. So the point is for me, I like to put things in proper scope. I like to hit on all points, all right? And I also say constantly, is that if the guy you don't like, fine, but attack him and show your evidence while they're alive. It's easy to do it when they're dead and bring forth certain points and arguments. That's what I have to say about it. You take it from there, Arthur.
Yeah, let me jump in. Thank you, Dr. White, for that analysis and perspective. Art, it looks like your guest is joined, so I think that's him. That we'll bring him on after your commentary. One of the things that you mentioned, Dr. White, was Candace Owens. She was politicized. She was a pro-American, pro-Zionist, anti-black, right?
Right.
And Kwame Ture charged us when he left in the mid 1990s in terms of the Black liberation struggle, that we are charged with raising the level of the consciousness of the unconscious. Her consciousness was raised around the issue where she found herself very ignorant on the historical construct of the Palestinian question. In an interview that she did with Dr. Norman Finkelstein, who is a Jewish anti-Zionist, one of the leading Jewish anti-Zionists in this country, he took her to school. I saw the interview live, and from there she was never the same on the issue of Israel. However, on the issue of anti-blackness, she's still one of the leading proponents. She was sponsored by Prager University, which is a anti-black, anti-Muslim front, to create a documentary that was totally negative on George Floyd, calling him a derelict, useless, and going and saying that the police didn't cause his death. I literally sponsored a documentary. So what I'm saying here, Art, as I bring you on this issue, that Charlie Kirk, and I watched his analysis, Dr. White, on Israel. It was very soft. He wasn't hard on Israel. Now, that whole movement with Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, even on the left side, the hard left side, with people like Anna Kasparian, they've been attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the MAGA base has been now, as Donald Trump announced 3 weeks ago, that his base hates Israel, right? That wave was coming, right? But that doesn't take away from anything that Sister Kelly said or his analysis, and he was a very anti-black. And he's not to be excused for that, saying stuff that Africans never had civilization because they didn't build structures, with more than one floor. Knowing that we built the pyramids, right? And stuff like that. So that we had no civilizations before European civilization. Literally said that. Well, we know that our scholars would be Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Ivan Carruthers, Dr. Conrad Worrell has written many books on the subject of the antiquity period of Africa and the civilizations, 10,000 years of civilization on the eve of the 24th dynastic period, while the white man was crawling on his knees and eating juniper roots and didn't know how to cook his food in Europe. So he's not to be excused from my perspective, or his little soft pivot on Israel, and he came late to the game on that because all his friends are already moved that in that direction. So I would say that as a basis, Art. What are your thoughts before we jump into it with your guests?
Well, I was really appalled by the idea that he would be characterized in the same mode as Dr. King and JFK and Malcolm, and even calling his death as an assassination was a little astounding to me. I've been in journalism for 45 years, and I know that some of the new pundits that have opinion shows that take up this new social media structure and run with it are given a lot of inflated ideas and lacking in the void of real, true journalism. I hope that we can put things back in perspective and move forward. I don't think anyone should be shot or harmed even for what they believe or what they think. So we definitely need to pause and at least ponder that part of the idea. But I think it's just sad, a sad situation. And I live right here in Arizona, where Turning Point, his organization was started, and he lies in a funeral home here, and will be funeralized here in probably a couple of days or weeks. So even though that proximity is there, it could be miles and miles away in terms of how we intellectually deal with who he was, and what his contribution will be. My main concern at this point is what I saw unfolding was really an attempt to use his death as a catalyst to create civil war, to create further consternation in the country and divide the country. I saw that from Donald Trump. I saw that from people on Fox News. I mean, immediately after the incident, before they even had a suspect or even knew who it was, they were already attempting to cast and lay blame on people who had nothing to do with what had occurred. So that part of it is kind of sad. Also, I saw it being framed as a political instrument to set up the coming elections, both this year and next year. If you can create that division, you can create an issue. You can say we're in a civil war mode. We've got white against people of color, and we're going down to the wire, to the polls. That makes for an adrenaline rush among those people who are still fearful. I saw Donald Trump do that this week his self for someone who he characterized as a friend and almost as a son. I thought that was very peculiar, very odd, but that's the world we live in now. People want to use things that shouldn't be used.
Yeah,
and let me jump in there a second. I think Arthur, you made a number of good points. One of the elements, though, is that the political elite or the political establishment, they have manufactured really an argument between what I call the underclass left and the underclass white and the underclass right into a polarized place whereby they will be fighting each other, while there's something else that's going on that they really want us, the American community, not to really look at. While this is going on, the United States is on the verge of a conflict in Venezuela. While this is going on, Israel is getting ready to do some more invading. They haven't apologized for Qatar, and they're getting ready to. They even threatened Turkey the other day. All right. While this is going on, American fleet is basically trying to encircle various parts of China. So while we are focusing on this element of domestic issues to make it look like there is a real ideological split in the country and we're fighting each other, real stuff is taking place. All right, the political establishment of the Republicans and the Democrats, they both are the same. They
Yes.
both are the same. All right, and the only ones who is in this engagement are the underclass, blacks, the underclass, whites, and it really means nothing because in about 5 days, this is going to be blown over. It's going to have some people going to protest, people going to be on Facebook making some noise, and after that, it's all over.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point that he brings up, Art, is that Dr. White raises the issue that I've talked about all the time. And I don't see this in any other countries, and I've traveled the world. People in America can only deal with one topic at a time. It literally is amazing. Just one thing at a time. They cannot handle two things and forget about three things. There's no multitasking when it comes to political thought. They all stay on one thing at a time, and they just can't handle anything else. But a little thing before we pivot that I want to say about Charlie Kirk is that he was a white supremacist. He stood for white power. Also, we have to understand his connection to the White House is not through Donald Trump, but through J.D. Vance, even though he had a relationship going all the way back to 2015 and 16 with Trump, stayed with him when Trump was out of office from 20 to 24, and he jumped back on that train. But his connection is through the neocons, the never Trumpers, right? So his body was flown from Utah on Air Force Two. That's the vice president's plane, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is an anti-Trumper, and he is a neocon. He represents the old Bush train and Cheney train. So it's going to be some interesting things as they move forward to look at this split in the white power movement. And we have to understand that the white power movement and the split and applaud these kind of splits, but then at the same time recognize them and also heighten the contradiction so that people can really begin to become politically educated around issues like this, as opposed to just being flat or in black and white. So I want to thank both of you for your analysis on that. So let's shift, let's pivot. Art, looks like we're still having some issues with our guest from Cameroon on this issue of Panafricanism and the youth movement in the Sahel. So I'll kind of let you lead the conversation and engage Dr. White. We had a very interesting and engaging conversation last week, Dr. White, in your absence. And I would like for Art to kind of engage you and expand that conversation.
Thank you again, and thanks for the opportunity to share some of these thoughts with our audience, Pan-African audience all around the world, and of course across the Muslim street, and into some other sectors of the world as well. I think that where we went last week, I think was an important excursion. We went into some things that are going on with Africa, particularly the Sahel and the movement there, the transformation and the compressing of several African states in the Sahel into one mindset, I think is very, very revolutionary and echoes what happened in Southern Africa about 30 years ago, where we had the alliance of the Southern African states and the Patriotic Front as they attempted and were successful for the most part in eliminating the strength of the apartheid government that was in South Africa and that had a stranglehold and a very strong influence throughout Africa and the world. Still have a lot of work to do. And I see the shift to the Sahel as being a new front line, so to speak, in that war and in that effort. So I think we can be gratified that this movement under people like Ibrahim Traoré and Assimi Goïta, Ibrahim Traoré, of course, in Burkina Faso, Assimi Goïta in Mali, the leaders of Niger and Guinea and Senegal and Chad now are following in close pursuit. They've all done a lot of the same things. They've expelled the US, they've expelled France, they've expelled a lot of the British influence from those countries, literally kicking out militaries and moving bases out of their country. A lot of people don't know when they talk about Africa that these European countries and the US have so many bases. Just the US alone has nearly 30 bases throughout Africa. That's where active military uh, units are on the continent of Africa, and they are there to police. They are there to guard American interests. We don't talk about that enough. Britain, France, Italy, the same thing, have various contingents. And then they always want to point to China and say, well, but the Chinese have all of this influence. 99% of what China has on the African continent is in the way of projects and infrastructure development, as opposed to military bases and activities to police what it is that they're doing on the continent. If the Chinese were tasked with trying to police the infrastructural projects that they have across the continent, it wouldn't even fly, because there is really only one base of military operation in Djibouti where the Chinese have even a presence in the whole continent. So, and that's a very recent presence, just in the last couple of years. So that's where we sort of left off. Certainly hope that we can have some influence from my compatriot and comrade from Cameroon. Hope he can join us.
Yeah, I think what you said is tremendous. And um, going back to the Pan-Africanist element that you argued, um, we know that Ibrahim Traoré, he is now the forefront. You know, he's leading the pack in many respects. I mean, he's actually using the term Pan-Africanism. He's actually using the term continental integration, which whereby all the countries in that region will begin to interact better. I think about a week ago, he did something that was tremendous, and which I've been hollering about for many, many years, and that he has canceled visa restrictions on neighboring states. And that's interesting, because for many Europeans, they didn't have these restrictions. I mean, just have a passport and go. But the Africans were forcing visas on their neighbors. And Mr. Traoré was saying that, listen, we're one country, we're one continent. Let's do this together. So he's leading the pack. And not that the president of Senegal and some of the others haven't done much work, haven't done great things. They've done tremendous things. But now with Traoré, he is saying to the world that American hegemony is dead. All right? And America can't do anything about it. We're going to get off your dollar. We're kicking out your military. If you don't like it, if you give us a tough time, we're calling our big brothers, Russia and China, who's willing now to get it on, because nobody fears America like they used to. What's interesting, though, is that while we're seeing this, is the question of the African American, because the African American is very pivotal in this. And many of our brothers and sisters in Africa, in the United States, while many of us support what's the Pan-Africanist movement that's taking place in Africa, many of us have this psychopathic, schizophrenic idea that still want to be tied on to the American hegemony and their argument. We see this in the military. We see this among our Black ambassadors. We see this among Black leaders in Congress and in Senate. We see this among mayors as well as state representatives. They still have this anti-Black thing going on, and that's very dangerous. All right, and so, but what you said is absolutely true.
It goes back again. Black reliance on our own resources and our own people to liberate ourselves is something that goes back to beyond the Haitian Revolution, going back to the early movements in Africa itself, Africans resisted the conquest by Europe. And if it had not been for the early development of weapons of mass destruction like Gatling guns and Maxim guns, it would have never happened in the way that it did. But the killing and murdering of tens of thousands of African warriors and people who went up against those guns with shields made of hides of animals and spears, and the development that Africans had gone to that point, certainly the history would have been changed graphically and in a totally different way. So we have always fought to liberate ourselves, and I see what Traore is doing, and Simi Goita is lining up to defend African land, African territory, and our people from those forces outside of the African continent. And it still has to proceed. But we have to think about it as a Pan-African community from the same perspective. We are at war. We have been at war for the last 400 years, and it is incumbent upon all of us to find our footing in that fight. We do it here in the US, we've done it in civil rights, and we've done it in Black Power movements, and we've done it in every way that we could conceivably do it without and including those situations that jeopardize our lives. You know, a lot of us have our lives on the line and have been on the front line. But I think what happened after the civil rights movement in this country and our limitations of being a minority population in terms of our numbers and our capacity in terms of how we handled and were able to procure weapons in this country, we've always been handicapped and limited in this country. We're outgunned, we're outnumbered, and it's been a deficient process altogether. But I saw in the 70s a distinct shift in movement from the front lines of the civil rights movement, because it was here for a while, shift to Africa. And it was passed off to Southern Africa, and the liberation movements were able to raise an army of freedom fighters in Southern Africa, in Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Namibia, Zimbabwe, of more than 2 million fighters under arms in Southern Africa. There's not a standing army of 1 million people anywhere other than China in the world today. So Africa has the capacity from a military standpoint to move forward and defend its land. And that's where we really have to get back to and understand that, yeah, you can change the way we introduce people to our countries via a visa program. You can deal with how you deal with the continental borders that are in place in Africa, but we will get down to the real brass tacks when we can defend the land militarily. And that's what's going on in the Sahel right now. We saw what happened after Libya fell, that we had all of a sudden an influx of these alleged Muslim terrorists. I mean, Muslims are the most peaceful people on the planet, and everything about how Islam is taught and proceeds is peaceful. So yet we have these alleged members of Al-Qaeda and ISIS coming in and talking about establishing a caliphate in Northern Africa. And we analyze and understand and know that trick. We know what that is. That is a smokescreen for something very different. And we can get into some of that as we proceed as well. think
I
it's an
think the big issue with Africa in this manner is Russia and the Rosenthal Company. Rosenthal is a state-owned company in Russia that in the last 8 months to a year they're introducing nuclear energy to many states: Mali, Burkina Faso, South Africa, Guinea-Bissau, and so on. And they're going to do this. This is going to be the point as to where Africa is going to be, because they need nuclear energy, and with nuclear energy, I mean, you can also have nuclear weapons if need be. And we know the United States is already setting plans to try to destroy this and to undermine this. This is going to be the tipping point, and that is, will Africa hold on to their sovereignty and say, listen, we will have nuclear energy, and it is going to be given to us by our friend from Moscow? Or are they going to um, sit down like Kenya and say, well, we don't need it, and we're going to have Washington do everything for us? It's a very interesting thing. All what you said about the caliphate and Iran is, I mean, and the Muslims is absolutely right. But I think this Russia thing with nuclear energy, which is coming to Africa, that's going to be a very interesting issue to me.
Well, we've seen by recently what happened in Iran,
Right.
that it is very challenging to come up with, to jump from nuclear power to nuclear bombs. It's just not an easy thing to do. And I think Africa has a long way to go to get to nuclear power, much less getting to nuclear weapons. But we have to be careful, brother, not to fall into this East-West Cold War trap that has been set and sprung in a number of places around the world, and it tends to distract from what Africa has to consider as the real issues on the continent. We need the freedom of our land. We need the freedom to have a liberated zone, a territory in Africa where we can freely think and move and do the things that we need to do to plan how we can expand that over the entire continent. China is there, as I mentioned before, in one location, in one base, and they're really not trying to establish a military presence in Africa. Russia has even less of a military footprint on the continent. So the real footprint is from the US, Britain, and France, the former colonial powers. They are the ones who are moving militarily, claiming that they're there to stop and fight terrorism, the war on terror. They want to fight these Al Qaeda and ISIS fighters that have infiltrated down from those areas that they call the Middle East, through Egypt and Libya and back into the Sahel region, where they're attacking Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger. And that conflict is going on with the presence and under the noses of these European bases that have been there. What Traoré and Assimi Goïta and other leaders in the Sahel have said, we see through this facade that you're there to protect us, because what is really occurring is that those masked and under the cover of darkness attacks that are allegedly taking place by Al Qaeda fighters, those things evaporated when we pushed you out of the country. So when we had the European troops and the bases in the US and the bases from Britain, when we had those people expelled, those attacks became less frequent. So who is paying mercenaries to masquerade as Islamic insurgents in Northern Africa to create havoc and actually murder and kill people, attack villages, and do major amounts of damage. I think that's a place where we're going to have to focus in the near future to address that. And I think that is something that we can impact because we know that those are contrived conflicts, and we also see where they're instigated from. We knew who attacked Italy. I mean, we knew who attacked Libya, rather.
Recording.
So,
Yeah, you're right. But the United States has almost 50 bases throughout Africa, and that doesn't even count the outposts. They have hundreds of outposts
yes,
there. We see that even though Ghana, a great country that I love, I mean, we have American bases there.
sure.
In fact, they can go in and they're not even checked. They don't even come under law in Ghana. We see that in Kenya. The question is that while France and some of the other countries have said they're going to leave, and they're leaving very slowly, it's not a mad rush. And the Americans, and I don't care if it's Trump or Biden or Vance or anybody else, they're going to leave. They're going to make it very difficult to leave, almost like they did with the Panama Canal Zone. So the question comes in, what are we as Africans ready to do? And that goes right back to the original issue of nuclear energy. All right, because Africa needs nuclear energy, just like Argentina has it, just like Brazil has it. And so we need it. And we also need the element of being able to harness a threat. The only reason why the United States has not gone into North Korea is because North Korea was able to harness their nuclear energy, not only to help their own people, but to defend themselves. And the only reason they went into Libya after doing Gaddafi is because Gaddafi did not follow advice. And he said, well, when other countries was telling him, like Russia, do not change from your nuclear stance, he said he will because he wanted to be off the terrorist watch list. And then at that time, he was off. He became a good buddy to the United States for 1 year. Then they go in and undermine him. I was in the middle of that. So we cannot conclude that nuclear energy and the possibility of nuclear weapons is bad for Africa. It's something that is needed if we're going to keep the major countries like from the West at bay. And I don't think it's an argument between East and West. It's an argument of self-sufficiency and self-defense.
Absolutely. I think that Africa has to come of age and be able to defend its territory. I mean, that's what makes you sovereign, is to be able to defend the land that you have. So it's one thing to talk about economics and sociology and the things that you need to put together your society. It's a whole nother thing to defend it. So maybe, nuclear weapons might make a difference. It didn't make a difference in South Africa because when the ANC came to power, South Africa had nuclear weapons, had several nuclear weapons. Yeah. It had done that during the apartheid regime. They had developed not only nuclear power, but they developed nuclear weapons and had them in their stockpiles. Nelson Mandela scrubbed those and said, throw those plowshares.
That was his mistake.
They needed to beat those plowshares and weapons and plowshares and get rid of these things. But I think he did that tactfully. I think he didn't want that to become an issue in his country at that tender moment of development in South Africa. He couldn't come out and be this all of a sudden, military brutish element without more of the continent being liberated and even getting to a point that South Africa, Namibia, Angola, and Mozambique, and several other countries had been able to attain under arms through their revolutionary freedom fighting movements. So again, that is where we have to start. that is where we are now. And I applaud the Sahel for their movement. I don't applaud that Russia is wanting to be an element there, just like I don't applaud the fact that we have all of these U.S. bases, 30, 50. They probably have even more bases there than that. My point is
I'll direct it right out of Germany. I want to jump in, guys. We run into our last brothers. We run into our last 15 minutes. I want to make a pivot in our conversation, but kind of stay on topic. To the audience that you're listening and watching The Muslim Street. You can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. So here's the pivot that I want both of you brothers to address. The Sahel and the global South and its strategic unification to fight off these proxy wars that are going on right now. We see the biggest one in Sudan. Right, the Darfur 23 was born on the banks of the Nile River in Khartoum, because we went there in 2007 to add clarity to what we thought was European and Western propaganda that was shaping and forming a bigger issue, and that was to divide that country up, which happened as we predicted in 2011, and they took the oil. Right now, I say this in two parts, and here's the question: the unification of the Sahel and the global South as a strategic movement vis-a-vis these proxy wars, and what is the play for the African diaspora, particularly here in the United States, in light of the Darfur 23, who met with the president at the time, Omar Hassan el-Bashir, several of the rebel groups, as well as the vice president of the South, who became the president of the South, in order to hold together a peace agreement that was negotiated in Abuja in 2005, right? So they literally we literally positioned ourselves as peace negotiators, right? In these civil issues that are going on, right? So the Sahel, the global South, address the strategic alliance vis-a-vis African liberation and Pan-Arab liberation, because we see this bleeding over of the same Western players and their proxies, the Emiratis, the Qatarians, the Saudi Arabia, destabilizing Yemen and offering cover for Israel and the United States on that issue for economic and geopolitical purposes. What part do we play in the diaspora, one, vis-a-vis the peace, and then also speak to the unification of the Sahel as well as the global South in reference to strategic alliances around Pan-Arab and Pan-African liberation?
Well, I think that what we were able to do with the Darfur 23, once again, that was an amazing diasporic effort to intervene in Africa, and that intervention came from all over the world. We brought people from all over the world to Sudan because we wanted to investigate for ourselves as teachers and business people, journalists, educators. We wanted to see for ourselves what was going on in Sudan, number one, but trying to put a different face on what the outcomes could be under our impact. And I think that that's along the lines of what the diaspora should continue to do. Those efforts should be multiplied 10,000 times, and we should be crawling all over Africa, making sure that what is going on in Africa is above boards and stays in the transparent realm. And that way we all can understand what's going on. But that was the mission of the Darfur 23, and we weren't successful in stopping what we knew and saw was a subterfuge activity going on and an effort to take the region of Darfur, turn it into a conflict zone, and then pit the North against the South over that issue. They were very cunning, very determined to get at the oil wealth that was in southern Sudan. And they were able to achieve that despite our efforts. But that gets back to what I was saying earlier about the ability for African countries to defend territory. And they have to do it in a way where there's some military coordination between one vassal state and another vassal state. And I call them vassal states because they're still operating under the Berlin Conference boundaries that were drawn by Europeans. It had nothing to do with Africans. Africans had a zero input, and then we're left with the mess to try and straighten it out and to live in those confines. So we still have a lot of work to do on the continent. Again, I look at what's going on in the Sahel, what went on in Southern Africa, what went on 70 years ago in Algeria, to understand that Africa has made checkerboard steps in liberating part of the continent and then moving to another area and then having that area that was previously liberated fall back under through democratic push by the same forces. You know, they want everybody to have democracy and elections every 4 years like they do in England and like they do in the US. And, you know, then they come out with the same kind of mess that, you know, we have looking at us right now, staring down our face with both barrels. You know, we have people like Trump, and that's a result of our so-called democratic process. I don't care anymore about how we achieve independence, but we need strong people, strong leadership like Traore, like Sima Goita, and others who have taken the responsibility on personally to make sure that Africa is safeguarded militarily, and they form the alliances necessary to not only kick out the US, and they have kicked the US out, and they have kicked out France, and they are moving swiftly now to get out of the way of African people. But that process has to continue. That's something that we all should be supportive of. We really can't deal with it in any other way because it's just counter-revolutionary, as Nikki Giovanni would say back in the old days.
Yeah. So, Dr. White, the global South and the Sahel have clashed over this issue of these proxy wars, particularly the Emirates running cover for France and the West in Sudan, where there is a serious crisis going on with our people there. What say you?
Yeah, first of all, the African American and the African in the diaspora, we must get a better handle on the conflicts that's taking place in Africa. I mean, we have conflicts in regional conflicts with Burkina Faso, Mali, Cameroon, and a host of other countries. We don't engage in this debate nor this discussion, so we can begin to put pressure on these countries to stop this conflict and to disallow them to allow other countries, the Western countries, to come in to help create this conflict. And what I mean by that, and also we can't ignore the fact that we have two major Muslim countries, right? That's having a proxy war in the Sudan. All right, that's the United Arab Emirates and and Saudi Arabia, I believe.
Yes, Saudi Arabia.
And they're both using American weapons, and Black people are dying. All right, it's a disgrace. Again, the Arabs are not saying anything about it, and the Muslims are saying very little, and Africans are not saying nothing, and it's completely dismissed in the United States, and Black people don't know nothing about it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's left out of the media here, and there has not been a lot of attention paid to the war that's going on in Sudan, but it is a much larger tragedy than what we're seeing every day in Gaza.
Absolutely.
We have 400,000 dead, not counting the millions that are displaced and injured and wounded in Sudan as a result of the conflict that's going on there. We're not even talking about or mentioning the Congo yet. Africa is being devastated, it's being looted, and it's being done quietly. And Africans in the diaspora need to pull those covers up and look at what's going on in Africa in any way you can. Instead of us spending time talking about Charlie Kirk and talking about things that are going on in the U.S. and what kind of relationships we are devoid of in our communities, we need to be looking at things that actually will affect us. Because believe me, if Africa is not free, we don't really have a leg to stand on. We don't have anything to fall back on like other major groups that are being very successful right now in the world, like the Chinas and the Indias of the world, that have a population at home that has the guarantee of being able to stand on free soil that they own, that they function from. But Africa is in disarray, and we're talking about when it's
Yeah.
buff and get out. So
Yeah. So Dr. White, you have the last few minutes to close out our program. I just want to make a note that our 423 flew into the airport in 2007 in Khartoum. It's gone. The hotel that we stayed at on the banks of the Nile River, it's leveled. The souk, the market that we shopped at for goods, services, to feel the culture of the people, totally wiped out in Khartoum. This is an atrocity. Dr. White, the last few minutes of the show tonight is yours.
Well, I just want Brother Arthur to speak a little bit more on the tragedy of what's taking place in the Sudan. I like what you said. It's 10 times worse than what's taking place in Gaza. And I think that our listeners need to hear that since you were there. And that's important because right now we're just focusing on Gaza, and we have something that's been taking place for a longer period of time. Brother Arthur.
Sure. And of course, the war in Sudan is raging, and it is largely over people attempting to mine gold primarily. There are huge gold deposits in the Sudan that run right into Uganda, which is just south of there. And you've heard the discussions about from Museveni's regime, who's the president of Uganda, saying that, he's got $14 trillion in gold that's in the ground in Sudan. Well, that same field and vein runs right into, or in Uganda, but runs right into Sudan. So we need to understand that this is about something other than just territory. It's about oil, it's about gold, and that's what Europe is after. It's not a conflict so much between the proxies. The proxies are the UAE and those countries that are being used to create that conflict, just like they are in Palestine, for that matter. Yeah. So same struggle, same fight, same people, same forces are being utilized against Africa that we see arrayed against Palestine. And that's
I just want to say one thing, that the United Emirates and Saudi Arabia, over 70% of their food comes from that area. Remember, Saudi Arabia and United Emirates can't grow anything for the most part.
It comes from where? The food comes from where?
Yes, from that region.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, so it's not fighting over oil and gold; they're fighting over food.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Certainly, that's a big, and we don't even mention water. We don't understand the development of water. The Nile is there, so that takes away from Africa. That takes away from African people who need that water as well. And one last thing I'll mention is, of course, Ethiopia just opened a very important hydroelectric dam on the Nile River, and it is a very promising venture from that standpoint, but it was completed. And we talked about nuclear power earlier on. I know there is a hesitance to move headlong into nuclear power because you have some three of the most tremendous river systems in the world, in the Nile River, the Congolese River, and the River Niger. So
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
I want to thank Dr. Viper Issa White for joining us at the Muslim Street. Art Mobley, Darfur 23. Great program, guys. Again, the audience, you can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. You can find us here on Sunday nights, 7:30 Eastern. We have some hard-hitting shows coming up. One in particularly that we're going to unveil, the Black liberation struggle and its joint policies and development with the Palestinian struggle. Some new things have arisen that we're going to be talking about on both sides of that. Also, Khalila Ali, wife of the champ, Muhammad Ali, will be joining us in the future. Coming, so stay tuned. And the last thing is, Dr. White and myself and others, we will begin to catalog as we move toward the end of the year, catalog and document the works and the life of Minister Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam. Again, thank you. Stay tuned. Muslim Street, you can find us all over all the social media platforms. And we'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, brothers.
Thank you. Thank you.